Well, we're here once again with Chester Grace. Chester, thank you so much for your help and letting us sneak in behind the scenes a little bit. Now, we blew a couple of buildings up today. A couple of them fell. One of them fell right away. A couple of them fell right away. One of them delayed a little bit. And so I was curious, can you kind of give us an overview of what happened and how it went?
Yes, we basically had 4 shots today. Of course, the 3 this morning at 10 o'clock. Of course, the first shot, if people was out there, they saw it and it saw the boom and a little dust and nothing happened. It just stood there. But if you was able to see closely, you would see all the rebar, like I was telling you the other day about all the rebar, and it had a massive amount of rebar.
And it was real thick rebar.
Real thick rebar, exactly. And what I was told later is that you could take all the concrete off that rebar, and it was still stood there because that rebar was that stiff and had that much in it. And then, of course, the recovery building came down good, and the smokestack came down good. And then at 1:30, we shot 2 more tanks. And even though most of the tank, the support holding the tank up was gone, once again, it was the rebar on the back side that was holding tension on the back side and actually holding it up in place. But they did eventually fall down. And we had to push, we had a machine that got behind the other one and knocked against it for about 10 minutes, and it came over.
Well, now let me ask you something. Now, this was something you said that sometimes you learn a lesson from different things the hard way, and I guess the thing you learned today was the rebar.
Yes, the rebar, and it was a good lesson, and it wasn't like everything went bad today because it was a very good day because everything's down, but it's the perception that you messed up, and that's what everybody sees. But really, we prepped these the way we did the smokestack. The 3 tanks was prepped the same way the smokestack was. And if it hadn't been for the excessive rebar, and we've learned a lesson that you got to cut all that rebar off the back side, the tension side, otherwise one layer of rebar will hold it. And normally we don't do that much, but lessons be learned.
Now, some of the things that stress you out about projects is obviously something that happened today. What are some of the other things that you worry about?
Well, basically, demolition is such a high profile, and you want to do, when you get a job, you want to do it right. I mean, and there's so much that can go wrong, and you constantly got it going through your mind, and you can prep it and do the best you can, and then, well, like today with the tanks, that rebar. And it's just constantly worrying about it and making sure you're doing right, and trying to think of every unknown that you can. That's why the night before a shot, you don't sleep much because you're.
You told me you had a nightmare.
Yeah, I had about 3 hours of sleep last night because, and the one thing that worried me was that first tank that I shot because of all the rebar, and I thought if it ever moved a little bit, it might bend that rebar and come on over. But as you saw, it didn't.
What is the largest structure you've ever taken down?
That bit would be a power plant.
You can move this way a little bit out of that thing in
okay.
your ear if you want to.
That would be a power plant in Canada, Mississauga, Canada. We shot in late June, and it was 3.5 million cubic feet, and it was the largest. In fact, the Guinness Book and World Records said it was the largest ever shot.
Wow.
On record, and it was a massive. Had 8 hung boilers, which was take 8 of these ones like we shot today, and that's basically what you're looking at. It was 1,200 foot long, 300 foot high, and about 300 foot wide. So it was a huge structure. And it too had some smokestacks that we took down the year before that they called the Four Sisters. And it was right on Lake Ontario, and it was what they used to use for navigational points because they called them the Four Sisters. So yeah, it had a lot of history behind that one. And Canada's getting rid of all their coal-firing plants. So there's one up there now that's even bigger than that that's coming down in about 4 years. So
what is the value of what you blew up today, what you took down today? What do they really get out of that?
The value in it is the steel. Of course, scrap metal right now is fairly high, and also just getting the site cleaned up. Right. Between the scrap and the cleanup, because the company that owns this property wants it to develop on. So therefore, all this has to be cleaned up to move on.
I understand. And you always draw a crowd, it seems like. And we had a crowd today, obviously.
Yes, I heard it was a pretty good crowd. I didn't see anybody because I was
running back and forth.
Back and forth.
We saw that red truck going back and forth.
And but yeah, it's always a big gathering because it's something you don't see every day.
Right.
And like this little town, they have never seen a demolition before. So, yeah, when we do go to a town, it does draw a pretty good crowd.
What is the biggest crowd that you've drawn?
The biggest one I can never think of was in St. Louis, Missouri, and that was back in April. We were shooting down a bridge, a little concrete bridge over Interstate 64, and we were going to shoot it at midnight. And we didn't think there'd be much of a crowd, but they guessed about 5,000 people watching this bridge come down, and there was a lot of bars in the area, and so they had a lot of parties.
No, they were all
They were
yeah.
they were in a festive mood when we got there.
Well, I just want to thank you on behalf of TV Camden for letting us be a part of it, and Dicon did a great job.
Thank you.
I know that it looked like that there was a failure there, but it actually fell on its own later, right?
Yes, it
Pretty
did.
much, yes.
We helped that one. Like I said, it took about 20 minutes for it to come on over, and the other two, yeah, they pretty much just fell right over.
Well, thanks for inviting us to come along.